This is the Anything Goes with Jackson Neill podcast. Welcome back. I'm your host, Jackson Neill, here for episode number 108. Today, I'm talking with Michaela Anne about her upcoming album, Desert Dove. But first, I just want to remind everyone that this podcast is available on all of your favorite platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and SoundCloud. It's also available on jacksonneillpodcasts.com, the go-to spot for everything that I publish. So Michaela has this project, Desert Dove, and it's slated for release this upcoming September on September 27th. So, in this interview, I talked with her about the making behind the album, the process that she went through to come up with not only the name, but the songs on it, and just what she's hoping people get out of listening to this project by her. It was a really, really fun conversation to have with her, and here it is. I just want to start off by asking, when did you start working on this latest album, Desert Dove?
Let's see. I started recording it in the end of April of 2018. So I've been writing for it for a while, but really kind of like figured out a plan that January, started officially recording the end of April, and recorded for 3 weeks on location in California. And then I think it was like mixed and stuff by the fall. It was a long process, and it wasn't mastered until I think a couple months ago.
Okay, yeah, so definitely some time that went into that. I read that you had worked on it in California. You're calling me from Nashville. So why, I guess, did you choose to work on it in California?
Well, I wasn't sure. I didn't know who I wanted to make the record with, and I had been touring a lot with this guy, Sam Outlaw, and he had a buddy named Kelly Wenrich, who is a producer and played a long time in this band, Delta Spirit, and had a home studio out in California in the basement of his parents' house. And Sam had kind of like pitched producing my record, I always thought he was joking. And then kind of when I kept thinking about it, I finally was like, wait a second, are you being serious? And maybe I should really consider this. So I went out in January to record with Kelly and Sam, because I also hadn't worked with two producers at the same time. Mm-hmm. And we did just 2 days in the studio to try it out, essentially. I kind of really wanted to make sure I knew what I was getting into before I committed to a whole record. And it went really well, and the dynamic with the three of us was really easy. And so because Kelly had the studio there, and also it was right on the beach, I kind of was like, why would I not want to? So I was like, I'll come live out here for 3 weeks and record and look at the ocean every day. And so that's how that all happened. It was all just basically because of Kelly. But I love Nashville, but it's something special to be able to go record or go focus on music away from where you live. So you're not like coming home every night dealing with your day-to-day stuff of like, oh, I have to clean my house, or I'm feeling like I'm neglecting my home or my partner and all that stuff. So that was also a cool aspect. Not to mention Nashville allergies are terrible for me, and I'm not the best singer in Nashville because of the allergies.
I think it's a really cool point you bring up about, not doing it just in your home because of all those little things that are attached. When you are home, did you almost feel like recording this project, it was almost a little bit of an escape for you while you're making it?
Totally, and I felt like for the first time, this is the first time I've made a record that way. Both of my last records I made in the town where I was living, and kind of like over a period of time. And this record, it really allowed me to kind of like create this space for it in my mind, this kind of like imagery and this other just this kind of like all-encompassing story that it holds a significant space for me. That is an escape. It's kind of a parallel life in a way, separate from my day-to-day reality.
I would say, like, how now recording it in one place where you said you spent time recording it on prior records, I guess, how does that affect the music? How does that affect your artistry by sitting down in this one place away from your home and saying, I'm going to make the album now?
Well, I think one of the perks of having a finite amount of time, granted we did have some overdubs and stuff afterwards, but we set aside a time and it was like, this is, we hired the musicians and it was like, this is the time we have to get this stuff done. So you're forced to make decisions and move on. And I like that because otherwise I could toil over decisions and choices forever. And I think it's really, for me, it's healthy to be able to be like, okay, this is a snapshot of this, and sure, there's hundreds of other ways we could have played it or arranged it or different instrumentations, but the limited time kind of makes you make decisions and live with it. So I like that aspect.
Yeah, it stops you from trying to be, have that kind of perfectionist thing of constantly tweaking and saying, oh, maybe I change this or that.
Totally, yeah.
Do you find, I guess, that in a way, even though there's almost a little bit more, confining, almost a little bit of a freedom from it, like, okay, I can make mistakes while recording this, or okay, I can maybe experiment a little bit too much, but I'm not going to go overboard since I only have these couple of weeks?
Yeah, and also to know what your motivation or your intent is in making a record, that I'm not delusional and that I'm like thinking I'm setting out to make the most perfect record that's ever been made or an earth-shattering record or anything like that. I'm going in to like make a recording of a collection of songs in a moment in time. So kind of looking at it in that way, and it takes a little bit of the pressure off, which I think it's good to put pressure on your work, but it also is like, this is, if you think of yourself as I'm doing this for my lifetime, that this moment, I want to capture this for what it is right now and not toil over it forever.
Mm-hmm. And I guess then what kind of moment and what kind of creative direction did you try to capture on this project?
Well, my last record came out in 2016, so it had been a few years. I guess it's been a few years now, so I guess it's been 2 years or something. Since I had last recorded, and I had been touring a lot, like more than I had ever toured up until that point. And I really kind of was going through a lot in my life where I was realizing that, I was like at the end of my 20s and realizing that a lot of stuff that I had kind of been preaching about life, like that things take work, that relationships take work, that you have to show up, all these different things, I was kind of getting hit with the fact that, like, there's a difference between saying this stuff and actually doing it and living it. So I kind of feel like this record was like during a huge growth period of just learning that I really don't know much at all. I think I kind of like came to a place of like, wow, a lot of my thoughts and beliefs about life that I was so maybe righteous about, everything kind of got turned upside down a little bit and was, a humbling experience of just like, life is harder than we like to think when we're in our 20s and think we know everything and how to, make our future. So it was just this period of a lot of questioning. So a lot of travel, a lot of instability, a lot of reevaluating things in my relationships and my mindset and my emotional makeup. So that is kind of what informs the record, that I feel like I was kind of pursuing a lot of those questions in a bit more vulnerable, honest, personal way than I had in previous records, but also was pushing myself to do it in a well-rounded way. Like, I really wanted to make a record that is not all slow songs, that it's not just all sad and slow, or it's not just all one thing. I wanted it to really represent an arc.
Mm-hmm. And for it to kind of have that kind of variety, like, because as a person, you don't constantly experience the same feelings or the same emotions, but rather kind of, like you said, an arc or differences in them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was a conscious thing that that Sam and I talked about as well, of having a record that wasn't all one thing. And especially in today's world of, Spotify and playlists, and it's weirder than ever, of like, it feels like you're just constantly chasing, like, oh, that's where I should put my energy because that's where I might be able to, like, get a few pennies of money or whatever, or all of a sudden I have to change gears and now it's this new platform. And I personally don't like how that can inform the art of, like, oh, what people are making money is these slow acoustic songs on these playlists. Well, but that's not really what I like that, but I don't want to do a whole record of that just because that's what seems to make money currently on these specific platforms. So it was really conscious of, like, wanting to make a record that I would want to listen to.
Mm-hmm. And I read that also that another thing that inspired this project, in terms of, speaking of this kind of modern time we're in, is just this short attention span. And I guess, something like Spotify kind of plays into that, or other streaming services where we're constantly listening to different things, or, reading different things online. And then on this one, you wanted to have a little bit more nuance and depth in it.
Sorry, I think you got cut off at the last.
Oh, no problem.
Just finish the sentence. Depth, is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just okay. A little more nuance and depth to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, certain songs on the record, like One Heart, which is essentially about being someone who opens up but maybe a little too fast, or falls in love with people a little too fast, and kind of this rebuttal of, like, well, is this a bad thing? Something like that, or By Our Design. I'm trying to think of which song specifically, but to me, take a little more conversation than just a one-liner, or somebody new about, inner conflict and falling in love with someone when you're with somebody else. And some of the tougher things that are easy to stand back and judge and make, kind of divisive judgments of. But I personally think life is never black and white. Like, nobody's all good, all bad. And I'm really interested in the conversations, the stories, the songs, the novels that really dig deep into that stuff and look at things from all sides and try and have a more complex understanding. And I don't know if I did that, but that was where my headspace was in my, attempt at writing these songs.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, kind of like trying to explore that almost gray area in between, and figuring out what exactly that area is.
Exactly, yes.
So I saw that during this recording process, you've mentioned a couple people, this just kind of all-star assortment of people helping you on this. What was that like to get all that assistance on the recording end?
It was great, and I had a great band. I had met the rhythm section. They were Aaron Lee Tajden's backing band a few years ago when actually I was on tour in California. And Aaron Lee was on tour as well, opening for Lucinda Williams. And I was like, it just happened that my dates were kind of like in similar locations, and my days off kind of like matched up with some of their shows. And so I saw them quite a few times. And I reached out a couple years later for when it came time to record, and Why Not is his name. He is the bass player, and he then kind of put together the rest of the rhythm section. And they were just the most positive, greatest group of people. And then one of the most exciting parts for me was that my friend Kristen Weber, who's just an incredible violinist, fiddle player, composer, string arranger, and she also happens to be one of my closest friends. She flew in for a couple of days and just like, she busted out these string arrangements and fiddle parts and sang harmony and just worked so hard, really fast. And some of the string stuff on the record is my favorite. So I just feel really, really lucky, like musically, that got to happen, but also just the emotional side of it all is really cool that she was able to come and contribute in that way.
Yeah, certainly. It sounds like you got a lot of different people, a lot of different, sounds that were able to be on this project.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, another one is Brian Whelan, who is a singer and songwriter in his own life, and but also a side musician and toured with Dwight Yoakam, and he plays piano and incredible guitarist and sings harmony on a couple of songs. So that was really awesome to have him as well.
Just like, an assortment of a lot of different people, a lot of different sounds and feedback, I guess. What was it like having all those different musicians in the room? Is that something that you're used to doing in a recording process, having that many different talented people in one area to record a project?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I've been lucky that I've been able to be around a lot of musicians of a really high caliber from a really young age. I think I've kind of been someone who's always tried to seek out people I admire. Basically all musicians who I think are way better than me. So, I don't find that intimidating. I get nervous, of course. I think I get nervous about everything, but I think that's one of the best parts, is being able to learn from them and see their ideas come to life and everything. So that is something that I've been privileged and lucky enough to kind of have since I first started.
So now with this album, it's set to release in September 27th. I guess, what do you want people to either know or expect when they go into listening to this project the first time?
I guess to listen to it with an open mind and open heart, and I hope some of the words, make people feel seen and relatable. My favorite thing as a listener of music is hearing someone say something in a song that might not be so predictable and might feel very specific, or maybe not so specific, but feels like, oh my God, that's how I feel. And that makes me feel less alone, and that's why, Lucinda Williams is one of my all-time favorite songwriters, because of that exact thing. So I hope when people are listening to it, if they're open to it, that might happen for them, that it'll take them on a journey of all of the different range of emotions, and I hope it also makes them feel good and maybe dance a little bit.
We always hope for that.
Yeah.
A big thank you goes out to Michaela for coming on to the podcast. Remember, go down into the show notes on whatever platform you're listening on. There, you'll find some links to check out her stuff, whether it's her Instagram, to follow her on social media, to keep up to date with everything as that September 27th album date comes closer and closer, or some links to check her out her music, because you want to listen to a little bit of her music before Desert Dove comes out this upcoming September. And that'll wrap it up for this episode of Anything Goes with Jax and Neill. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to rate and subscribe this podcast on your favorite platforms, because that does a lot to help grow the show. Remember, new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, although next week I will be on hiatus from all of my podcasts, taking a quick little summer vacation. For more episodes, go down into the show notes and visit the link to jacksonnneillpodcast.com. There you'll find all of the episodes to this podcast, as well as the Jax and Neill Music and Sports Podcast. Normally, besides next week as I mentioned, new episodes of the Music Podcast on Sundays, with the Sports Podcast coming on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you're a big fan of the show, maybe consider becoming a subscriber on Patreon. For just a couple dollars a month, you can get access to bonus content from my interviews here on Anything Goes, including today's with Michaela, where I ask her about some of her favorite music, including Buddy and Julie Miller, places she's lived growing up, all this kind of cool stuff. If you want to get access to that, go over to Patreon, and there you also get access to bonus segments from my sports and music podcasts. I write, record, and produce these podcasts myself as a full-time college student, so any little bit of support really, really does go a long way. Link to Patreon down in the show notes. If you want to stay up to date on everything I'm doing, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JacksonNeill20. Today's music is by Analog by Nature with their song CDK Sunday. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you all next time.